So you want some awesome Korean movie recommendations, but you don't know where to start. That's awesome that you clicked this video because we're going to give you 10 movie recommendations for South Korean films. Maybe you're a newcomer to South Korean films, or maybe your friends talk about how awesome Korean films are. Or maybe you're coming from the K-pop or K-drama side and you want to experience Korean cinema. Or maybe you watched Korean cinema a long time ago and you think that My Sassy Girl, Oldboy, Windstruck, and the host and the newest movies of South Korea. Well, if you guys fall in any of these categories, especially the last one where you still think My Sassy Girl from 2001 is still a new movie, well, this video is definitely for you. We're going to introduce 10 Korean movies from the 2010s decade for you to watch and check out. If you're definitely one of those old school Korean cinema fans from the 2000s, it's time to upgrade your library and get some new Korean films for you to watch. Now, before we get onto the list, I do want to mention that although not all of these films on these lists are my personal favorites from the 2010s decade, although a good number of them are, and these are the easiest films to ease a newcomer into Korean movies. So with that being said, it's time to get on with the list. So the first movie is Sunny, and Sunny is a comedy drama movie. Now the basic story starts off like this. You have this middle-aged, about 40-ish-year-old woman that seems like she has the perfect life. She lives in a rich house, she has a nice daughter, her husband's successful. Anytime she needs something, whether it's money or a new handbag or any other cool luxury, she can definitely get. However, a deeper look inside her life, she's really depressed. So one day she's visiting her mother in the hospital, she bumps into her very sick high school friend. And doctors don't know how long she'll last and live. Her dying wish to her friend is to get all her friends back from high school and reunite as a girl group called Sunny. This movie is really touching. You'll find a lot of comedy into it, and you'll actually long about your own high school experiences in life. If you're a bit older, it really brings back that old school 1980s feel in the movie, and you'll definitely have a lot of nostalgia. And I think you'll definitely empathize with the girl group Sunny when the film ends. The next movie is The Thieves. And The Thieves can be summed up as Korea's Ocean's 11. And even if you've never watched Korean film before or haven't watched Korean movies in a long time, this movie has a lot of big hitters in it. In fact, Jeon from My Sassy Girl is in this movie, and she still looks young as ever. So the basic story of this movie is that there's a bunch of thieves from Korea, and as cat burglars, they steal pretty much the expensive stuff, jewelry, necklaces, anything that costs in the millions. They start stealing stuff from banks and wealthy businessmen in Korea, but after a while, the police and detectives are onto them. So they have to leave Korea to go to Hong Kong. And once they're in Hong Kong, they actually meet up with a group of Chinese cat burglars. Together, the Korean and Chinese thieves form together to steal a valuable jewel worth $20 million. But this jewel is somewhere in this casino, the security is high, and this is the biggest heist that either group, the Korean or the Chinese group, has ever done. Not to mention the fact that not all of them know each other, nor trust each other. The next movie is Confidential Assignment. This movie stars heartthrob Hyun Bin, and if you guys were watching Korean dramas back in the 2000s, he was in the 2005 Korean drama My Name is Kim Sam-soon, which was a hit in Korea. He was also in the 2010 drama Secret Garden. The movie starts off like this. There's this North Korean rogue leader that's doing some counterfeit and shady stuff, and he escapes North Korea, and basically the North and South have to capture this mastermind because this guy's dangerous. So they assign one agent from North Korea, one agent from South Korea, and together they have to team up to find this North Korean fugitive. And as you guys can imagine, there's already tension and trust issues from the North Korean agent and the South Korean agent. And that's to be expected. They're coming from two different nations and they're forced to work together with one another despite not knowing each other. And this movie really has that rush hour feel, and I really liked how Hyun Bin, the North Korean agent, is pretty much straight-laced and serious, while you have Yoo Hae-jin, the South Korean agent, like really funny, laid back, and he doesn't really take his detective work seriously. But together they team up, and despite their weaknesses, they use their strengths to try and capture this North Korean fugitive. The next movie is The Handmaiden, and this 2016 film definitely got news when it first came out. Basically, it's an erotic thriller, and when I say erotic, I mean this is like rated 19. There's graphic stuff in this movie. And as soon as I say that, some of you guys are like, ooh. If you watch Korean cinema in the 2000s, you know the director, Park Chung-wook, and he is the guy that directed Oldboy. So you already know, since this is Park Chung-wook and he directed Oldboy, that this movie is going to have its twists, its shock value, and definitely have a lot of crazy stuff in the story that you won't see the first time around. So here's a story in a nutshell. So this movie takes place in 1930s South Korea when it was occupied by Japan. So you have a bunch of con artists that are trying to get rich by infiltrating this Japanese heiress mansion. And to do that, one of the con artists, Count Fujiwara as he calls himself, is trying to get himself married to this Japanese heiress, but they don't know each other at all. So to do this, they have to hire a handmaiden. And basically this handmaiden, who's working for the con artist, has to pretty much butter up to the heiress and say, check out my friend, Count Fujiwara. He's a really handsome guy and you should get to know him better and perhaps marry him. But as the story unfolds, things don't go as planned and some crazy stuff happens, as well as learning about the deep-rooted history of the mansion itself. And the story and the twist definitely takes a simple story of a couple of con artists trying to rob a rich woman into something more. The next movie is The Admiral, Roaring Currents. And this movie has popular actor Choi Min-sik, and he's from Oldboy. Yeah, there's a lot of like reoccurring themes here with, actors or directors coming from the 2000s, and they reappear in 2017. The Admiral takes place in 1597. It's during the Imjin War. And you're like, what's the Imjin War? Imjin War is basically Japan trying to take over Korea. And just a little bit of history, Japan unifies under this guy named Toyotomi Hideyoshi. And Toyotomi Hideyoshi is like, you know what? I conquered Japan. I'm gonna take over Korea next. But there's this one badass general named Lee Sun-shin, or Admiral Yi, and he's like, nah man, you can't take over my country. But in the beginning of the movie, he gets kind of like betrayed by his king. He gets stripped down and demoted to a common soldier from an admiral. And while he's in prison, the Imjin War goes from terrible to like disastrous for the Koreans. Like under this new admiral, they pretty much lose like 95% of their ships. They lose so many boats that Japan is like, looks like we'll conquer all of Korea pretty soon. So Korea is scrambling. Oh man, we just lost like pretty much almost all of our boats. Who can we turn to? And it's the same guy they imprisoned that's never lost a naval war in his history, Admiral Yi. So Admiral Yi is like, you know what? I'm back. But his navy of like 80 ships is like 13. And you're like, oh, well, that sucks. And the Japanese has over 300 boats. 13 ships against 300 boats. Yeah, it's not a good sign. But the Joseon dynasty, Korea's kingdom, is like, well, make magic happen, Lee Sun-shin. Make magic happen with 13 boats. Your 13 boats gotta defeat a huge Japanese armada. And the resulting battle is called the Battle of Myeongram. The next movie is The Wailing, and this movie came out in 2016. Korea these days don't really have as many thriller horror movies, but this movie was definitely hot. It was one of the hottest movies in Korea that year. And the reason why this movie was so hot is the story was just solid overall. So here's the beginning plot. You have this town called Gokseong, the Korean name of the movie, and you have this detective that gets called up in the morning to investigate this like murderous death. So he wakes up, spends some time with his family, and goes to the crime scene. And when he gets to the crime scene, he notices a lot of bodies just dead, some more mutilated, slashed, and he's like, whoa, this is crazy. This never happens in my small town. He's wondering what caused all this. And during the next several days, more murders happen. More bad stuff happens in his small town. So he has a list of suspects, and he's playing this game like the board game Clue, where he's like, who killed them, where, and how? And throughout the movie, this movie has some shamanism in it. This movie has some of the occult in it. This detective is leaving no stones unturned to find out who the real killer is. You'll definitely have this real sense of thrill and horror when you watch this movie. The next movie is Train to Busan. And Train to Busan is Korea's best zombie movie. It's so good, in fact, that you can find it on Netflix. And I keep mentioning this, but if you're a fan of Korean dramas or movies back in the 2000s, you're gonna see Gong Yoo, and he is from Coffee Prince, and he's back. So why is this movie a big deal? Well, check this out. So the movie starts off like this. So you have this high-scale, wealthy fund manager. He's divorced, he has a daughter living with him, but he's doing well monetarily wise. But like family-wise, not so much. He doesn't really spend much time with his daughter. So his daughter wants to see her mom in Busan, and her and her dad live in Seoul. So they're like, okay, well, you know, I'm busy, but I'll take you to the train station and we'll go to Busan to visit your mom. So while they're going to the train station, they notice like police and an ambulance going around the town, and they're thinking, what's going on, right? So once they board the train, they notice zombies are attacking the station and some are inside the train they're in. And this movie soon goes into like mass hysteria as normal people are pitted in this like craziness of zombie infection and hysteria. Gong Yu has to survive with his daughter as well as the rest of the train passengers as they go to Busan. And this movie is a huge deal because Korea doesn't really do much of sci-fi or zombie movies very well. But with Train to Busan, Korea finally broke the mold and said, you know what? Let's try a zombie movie. And this movie will definitely remind you of World War Z. The next movie is I Saw the Devil, and this movie can mess up your mind. It came out in 2010, and it's like this psychological thriller movie. So check out this. So one day there's this woman that has her car broken down on the side, and she has to fix her flat tire. So this bus driver pulls up, and the woman, thinking that this bus driver is going to help her fix her flat tire, is relieved. But the bus driver is actually a psycho killer and kills the woman. Just boom, straight out, like, whoa, this is deep. So the next day, the woman's fiance, who works for the NIS, or the National Intelligence Service, which is basically Korea's FBI, wants revenge. He wants this criminal to pretty much suffer, wants to see him tortured slowly. So he lets him live. He basically tortures him, sends him messages, says basically that he's watching this psycho killer, but he actually never kills him. His whole intention to make his life suffer so much that he can't bear his life anymore. The psycho killer starts to catch on to this, and he starts to play the game right back at this NIS agent. The next movie is The Man from Nowhere, and this came out, like with I Saw the Devil, in the same year of 2010. And this is basically the Korean John Wick, and it stars heartthrob Won Bin, and if you're a fan of Korean movies in the 2000s, he was in the movie Taegukgi, The Brotherhood of War. So this movie basically stars this guy, Won Bin's character, who runs like a quiet pawn shop, and next door is a family of a mom and a young daughter. But the mom is involved in this drug trade, and one day the drug traffickers are about to visit the mom, so the mom pawns off the drugs to the guy that lives next door running the pawn shop. But the pawn shop owner doesn't know that there's drugs in this bag that the mother gave. So when the drug traffickers come in and kidnap both the mother and daughter, well, Won Bin has to get to action. The drug traffickers soon notice that maybe the drugs are with the pawn shop owner, but I mean, it's Won Bin, so he kicks both their butts and says, you know what? It's time to rescue the kidnapped mother and daughter. And the last movie on this list is the most recent movie. It's a 2017 movie, A Taxi Driver, and it's about the Gwangju Uprising, or some people say the Gwangju Massacre of the 1980s. This movie's pretty much about a taxi driver that's trying to make more money for him and his young daughter. He's a couple months behind rent, and he just needs to make quick cash fast. And across the sea from Korea, there's this German reporter based in Tokyo, Japan, who wants a new scoop. And he finds out the scoop is in Gwangju, which is a couple hours away from Seoul. So he goes into Seoul. The taxi driver finds out that this German reporter is paying a lot of money for him just to take a taxi drive over to Gwangju. So they both go to Gwangju, but the Gwangju uprising is taking place on May 18th, and there's a lot of violence. And as soon as they sneak into the city past like the military guards, they find out that the Korean government is firing upon their own soldiers and using martial law to keep the student protesters down and the democracy movement down. And this movie is really important to Koreans because it shows the first steps of Korean democracy, and this movie might even shed a tear. This movie is really sad, but you'll learn a lot about Korean history and the Korean democratic movement, in which they finally had democracy in 1992. So those are our top 10 films that you should watch in the 2010s decade. So what do you think about our films? Do you guys agree? Disagree? Do you want to see some of the films on this list? I'd love to know your opinion in the comments below. And of course, if you've seen these films and you have other I'd love to know your opinions in the comments below as well. And if you guys want more Asian movie suggestions, please grab our free ebook, The 108 Asian Movies to Watch, by signing up for our free email list below. And with that being said, I'm off to watch another Asian movie, but I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy, guys.